It's also reported in the Observer that Kevin Sullivan and Evad Sullivan, that's Dave backwards, will be managed by Sheri in their upcoming feud against the Nasty Boys for the WCW Tag Team titles. And when things are so planned in advance and shows are taped in Orlando, oftentimes, 3 months in advance.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious pretty quickly what the company has in mind for you. Even if they don't necessarily sit you down and say, here's what we're doing. When you get those Orlando tapings, okay, so this is kind of the idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you remember about those Marathon Orlando tapings in that era? Because there's good and bad reports I've heard from those.
On one hand, it was great that we were at Disney MGM, they used to call it. Now it's Disney's Hollywood Studios. But my kids were so little at that time that we would actually go to Cocoa Beach and get a place on the beach, and then I would commute back and forth. There were some good times at, I believe it was the Marriott Residence Inn, where the men and women would stay. There were some good times. They would have a party outside. I remember Dewey being about just old enough to walk, and he was in a little gown, and he was swaying to the music. And my wife to this day remembers Leon White just gazing at him, like this. Here's this rugged guy, the stiffest guy, stiffest, hardest hitting guy in this business, and he's just so enamored with this little, I'm talking enamored in a positive way. You look at the beauty of a child. My wife will never forget that.
It was a cute moment.
I also remember rooming with the Armstrongs.
Really?
Brad and Brian. This was a time when my wife wasn't on this trip, and we were a little bit off we were a half a mile or a mile away or so from the residence in there. And the Armstrong, they come home, and man, they've been through a tussle. These guys are talking bleeding lips, bloody noses, and so I hear them yelling when they, as they're coming in, and I have this vision when they open up the door that these guys have fended off 5-6 people, back to back, brother to brother. Turns out the fight was between Brad and Brian in front of everybody. I didn't see the fight. But like my brother and I, there was a definite no punching in the face rule, right? Like, I guess Bullet didn't instill the these guys clearly taking face shots, So when I asked Brian about it at one of my shows, he went, white trash, That's the way they were. I don't know if any brothers loved each other more or fought each other more, but they were a unique family for sure.
Brian Armstrong, of course, is going to go on to be Road Dogg.
Yeah.
We know that he had such an incredible career, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera.
Yeah.
But Brad Armstrong, another guy gone way too soon. But everybody who wrestled him, Mick, says he was one of the best that ever did it.
Just a consummate professional. I remember Vader coming back, and this is, middle of the card. He's Vader in a rare match where he doesn't have a main event, and he comes back and he says, what an honor it was to work with that guy. And I think everybody felt that way. So I only had a handful of matches with Brad when he wasn't Arachnaman.
Yeah.
Which Marvel exercised its
pretty quickly
veto on. But no, that's the same guy, just in purple and yellow. But it was one of those WCW matches at the Georgia Mountain Center. I think it's going to be Hammer and Arachnaman against me and an opponent I can't remember. And the Georgia Mountain Center was marked by a stairwell at the left side of the building. That was a straight shot. It was like 3 or 4 flights of stairs, all leading down. So there were no twists and turns. It just went all the way down. And Dusty's talking to me, and he goes, and he gets this far away look in his eye. He goes, oh, damn, I remember Tampa Armory. I give Harley Race a shot, and I'll be damned if Harley Race doesn't take that whole bump, goes down ass over tea kettle, down every one of those stairs. You've never seen anything like it. And then he looks at me and goes, now I'm not saying I want you to try that. And then I go, I think I can do that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was halfway home to Atlanta that I thought, he wanted me to do that.
Yes, he did.
He made me feel like that idea was my idea.
Yep.
And I was glad we did it. But going back to Brad, I think the most incredible thing I saw from Brad was actually not in ring, but backstage in a game of Hangman
Okay.
where with I think I'm playing with Dennis Knight and Mark Canterbury.
You guys just randomly play Hangman.
Randomly
backstage.
playing Hangman because there's a blackboard up there, right? So it's like Hangman is like Wheel of Fortune, except you have the
For kids.
Yeah, for kids. And it's a long puzzle. It's going to be difficult to solve, and there's only like 4 letters that are actually up there. Maybe there's 6 letters, but I'm saying there's a whole lot of blank spaces. And Brad walks into the room, goes, "I love the nightlife. I've got the boogie," and he walked out of the room. We all went, "How did you do that?" That's exactly what it was, because it was my puzzle. The old '70s song, "I love the nightlife. I've got the boogie." So he was one of those guys, and he is probably the greatest example of the guy who would have been so well served by being the real Brad Armstrong.
Yes.
And he would make you laugh in the dressing room as hard as anybody, and then he would go out and be boots and trunks. And he was a great worker, but he was always that guy, you know. Between him and Midian, Dennis Knight was another backstage entertainer, and I couldn't find a way to channel that. In those cases, couldn't find a way to channel that personality into the in-ring character.
At least I didn't try naked Brad Armstrong. Just saying.
Right. So can I, this is one, I was the commissioner when Naked Midian was in town, right?
Yeah.
And so it's still plausible in 2000 that the commissioner of a soon-to-be billion-dollar company doesn't have a cell phone, right? It's plausible, right? So I need to, Midian's my assistant. He's got nothing but the pouch, right? He's naked except for the pouch. And I said, man, I need to make a phone call. Do you have a quarter? He goes, yeah, right here in my pouch. And I reached back and I said, I just need one, not a whole roll. And he said, that's not my pouch. It never made the air, you know.
That's tremendous.
Is that not a great line in our business?
That is a tremendous line.
That's not my pouch, right? And it never made the air. At least I don't think it made the air. Yeah.
It's trains, planes, and automobiles. Those aren't pillows.
Then they start talking about the Bears game.